New from K-Tel Records, 22 explosive hits.
Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be talking about a British band by the name of Suede. Now, in the US, their releases were released under the band name London Suede to avoid confusion with an American folk singer who recorded under the name Suede. And I'm going to tell you, like every episode, how I got into the band. And that's because I started reading the British press about this great new band, and they had just released their brand new single called The Drowners. This is 93, I guess. And so I bought an import copy of that CD single. All three songs were mind-blowingly super cool. Now, the best way to describe Suede music is they're very unique and original. But you can, let's say, take the Smiths and throw away Morrissey, add David Bowie, add some glam in there, add some 60s pop influences, just big amalgamation of great pop music, and it comes out unique and original and very melodic. Now, Suede were not like all the other Britpop bands like Blur and Oasis. They weren't minding that 60s Kinks, Beatles type pop. Suede were definitely more influenced by seemingly stuff from the 70s, as I said, glam rock, and they were very unique. In fact, at the end of this episode, I'm going to have a short medley of songs spanning the entire career, even including the solo projects. But what I want to do is I want to start right now and just show you what's available by the group Suede, or London Suede. As I said, they're known in the US. Now, first I'm going to show you the CDs from the quote-unquote mothership. And the mothership I refer to is the band, and all the other side projects I will show after all the releases by the band Suede. Now, the debut album came out in 1993. Suede were Brett Anderson on vocals, Bernard Butler on guitars. He was an amazing guitar player, definitely influenced by Johnny Marr, Mick Ronson, and Bert Jansch, a lot of people like that. He had a lot of influence going on, a lot of great musical ideas. Matt Osman was on bass, and Simon Gilbert was on drums. This was a fantastic debut album. This here is the expanded edition that came out on Edsel. It features the album tracks, B-sides, bonus tracks, loads of stuff there, including a DVD. Now, after all that material came out in 1993, we're talking the album and plus an album's worth of B-sides. In 94, out comes the album Dogman Star. Now, this album was more emotive. There was more depth to it. It was more orchestral. It wasn't just, straight ahead sort of guitar rock or guitar glam. There was something special to it. It really was just this big, wonderful sound of a band growing so quickly. Unfortunately, Bernard Butler, the guitar player, who co-wrote the songs with Brett Anderson, left the band like right before this album was finished being recorded. But it's still this lush, wonderful album full of beautiful moments and tough moments, and it's pretty much like reality, I guess you could say. It's called Dogman Star, came out in 1994. This is the version that features a lot of extra bonus tracks and a DVD. And again, interesting thing about Suede is, I compared them musically to the Smiths. Well, they were also doing the same thing the Smiths did. The Smiths would constantly release singles and always give you bonus tracks, as the B-sides. So they were giving you, more music for your money. So the CD singles that were coming out always had like 2 bonus tracks that were not on the album. So it was really fantastic. But since Bernard Butler had left, the band, instead of calling it quits, they brought in Richard Oakes on guitar and Neil Codling on keyboards, and they recorded Coming Up, which came out in 1996, and it continues that wonderful trend. It's not as lush as Dogman Star, but there's more keyboards in there, but it's still that same great Suede sound because, of course, Brett Anderson's vocals, very unique vocalist. This is a version of it that contains a bonus disc of B-sides and rarities and all that kind of fun stuff, and that came out in 1996. Now, remember when I told you that the band did a lot of B-sides and non-album tracks? Well, just like the Smiths' Hatful of Hollow, Suede released Sci-Fi Lullabies, which was a 2 CD collection of B-sides And this pretty much makes up two really great albums, to be honest. I mean, not every single track was just album quality, but most of them were. And, you kind of wonder, well, how come that ended up as a B-side? How come they just didn't release 2 albums that year? But the market, doesn't work that way. But Sci-Fi Lullabies gathers all the non-album tracks. Now, believe it or not many B-side collections can be, worthy of being a great gateway into a band. But if you stumble across this before any of the studio albums, definitely worth your time. In 1999, they released Head Music, which continued the trend of Coming Up, which featured a lot of great stomping British rock and pop anthems with that glam feel with a little bit of keyboards in it. Still, listening back to this, it doesn't sound dated. A lot of music with quote-unquote keyboards sounds dated, sounds very 1996 or 1987, whatever. But Suede were smart enough to make yet another timeless album using then modern technology. And again, on Edsel, this is the version with loads of bonus tracks and demos and all that fun stuff, B-sides, and DVD as well. Neil Codling left the band, and he was replaced by keyboardist Alex Lee, and then they released the album New Morning. This is a very different album for Suede. I mean, not radically different, but it was kind of almost a normal album, where everything here was the band reaching out and experimenting and doing all this crazy stuff. A New Morning was them sort of almost reflecting, pulling back a little bit. Brett Anderson's singing was more smooth and relaxed, and he sounded more confident, and it didn't sound like he was trying to say, hey, look at me, I'm the lead singer. It was more like he was trying to draw you into the songs. And again, this version on Edsel contains loads of bonus material and a DVD, and that came out in 2002. This album didn't do as well as the others, and the band split up. Now, I was going to mention that there's a lot of Suede compilations that cover this period. The one that I actually own here is Suede Singles, but there are definitely other collections. There's one like 2 CD set on Edsel Records that you can also get like a 3 or 4 CD version, something real great. But this here actually had 2 non-album tracks on it that were quote-unquote new songs. This is also good if you just want to try out the band. Now, before I tell you about all the little solo side projects, I'm going to continue with Suede because they reunited in 2013. Neil Codling, keyboardist, was back in the band, and they released the album Blood Sports, which came out in 2013. A great return to form. Rough, tough, that great Suede sound back, and it didn't sound forced, and really they sounded like classic Suede and a more modern version of it as well. So really great return to form. Then they returned again with Night Thoughts in 2016. Yet another fine collection of Suede songs, and definitely worth your time tracking down. They definitely deserve your attention because they're still creating great records. As a matter of fact, they even released an album called The Blue Hour, and that came out in 2018. Another fine collection of songs. This is a band that has matured, and there's much more emotion in their songs. There's much more depth in their songs than ever before, and that really comes out on these newer albums. Now, they have an album coming out called Autofiction, and I'm really looking forward to that. There is a single that's already out now, but I can't obviously comment on anything about the album until I actually hear it when it comes out. So that is everything by The Mothership, by the band Suede / London Suede. Now I'm going to quickly get into their side projects. After Bernard Butler, the guitar player, left Suede after the second album, A Dogman Star, he formed a duo with a vocalist by the name of David McCalmont, who used to be in a band called Thieves. But this is a great album. It is called The Sound of McCalmont and Butler. It's soulful, it's glammy, it's folk, it's rock. It's a whole lot of stuff on here. There's a big single off this album called Yes, and a tremendous album. It's entirely different from Suede, but it's also not entirely different from Suede, and it's entirely different from the Thieves, and also not entirely different from the Thieves or McCalmont. It's really a great collection of songs. Two guys coming together and creating something seemingly out of nothing. They were really getting to know each other during the making of this album, but unfortunately they broke up after the album had come out. This is the Edsel Expanded Edition featuring tons of bonus material and a DVD. Then in 1998, Bernard Butler released his debut album called People Move On. This is the Expanded Edition. This is a great record. takes exactly what he was doing with Suede, but pushes it forward. He's a great vocalist on his own. So, I was kind of a little bit, hesitant going, he never sang with Suede as far as I know. What's this going to sound like? But the minute I heard songs like Not Alone and Stay, I was hooked. Now, this Edsel version contains the remastered version of the album, plus he went back in 2021 and redid his vocals on it. So you get both versions of that album, plus you get the original single B-sides and the newly recorded vocal single B-sides, and you get a bunch of demos and rarities, and that's another fine album. Bernard Butler solo album came out in 1998. He followed that up in 1999 with Friends and Lovers, another great collection. Now, the song sort of starts out like, oh my gosh, he's falling into this Oasis thing. But then it just quickly changes and you realize, no, this guy's got better choruses, better chord changes. I have to admit, it's not as arresting as the first album, but it's really, really just a fantastic release. And then lo and behold, in 2002, out comes yet another McAlmont and Butler album. This one is much more soulful, more polished production, some absolutely great songs. Whereas the sound of was more raw, this is more smooth. I was really happy when this came out, and it's got a lot of great songs on it. My favorite song in that album is a song called Make It Right. Now, before I switch things again, Bernard Butler has produced tons of stuff you wouldn't even realize. Like, do you remember Duffy? Not Stephen Duffy, but Duffy, I think the album Rock Ferry. He co-wrote, produced, whatever on that. He's worked with so many different artists. Edwyn Collins from Orange Juice. Just a list too numerous to mention. I recommend you check him out on Wikipedia or go to his webpage or Facebook page or whatever. Super busy guy. In fact, he's been recording collaborations with other artists lately. This came out in 2020. It's an album he did with Catherine Ann Davis, and it's called In Memory of My Feelings. And this is the version with a few bonus tracks. They do a version of Madonna's Live to Tell. Now, he's just released a brand new collaboration album called For All Our Days That Tear the Heart with singer Jessie Buckley. I do not have a copy of that. Now, at the end of this video, there is a medley. I didn't put anything from this album or the one with Jessie Buckley, only because I had to cut out a lot of songs to sort of make it as short as possible, but as effective as possible. So I hope you stick around for that. But this, and from what I heard off the new Jessie Buckley and Bernard Butler album, they both sound really good. Now we're going to start winding things down. And I know this is getting convoluted because I'm going out of sequence, but in 2005, Bernard Butler and Brett Anderson, the guitarist and vocalist from Suede, reunited in a new band called The Tears. And this just sounds like the next logical step for Suede. Lots of great songs on here, my favorite being Refugee. But this was a fine album. Unfortunately, it didn't do as well as everyone was expecting. When you hear this album, you're going to, how come this didn't sell as well as the Suede albums? But maybe just people didn't realize it was out. I don't know. But The Tears, and it's called Here Come the Tears. That is Brett Anderson and Bernard Butler from Suede with their new band in 2005. Now, finally, let's get to Brett Anderson, the lead vocalist. In 2007, he released his debut album, self-titled, and this album contains a lot of great songs, sort of a more pared down Suede, not as aggressive. He's sort of moving into sort of softer things. There's strings on the album, piano, acoustic guitar, really, really wonderful album. It's a great transition album because the next two albums he released, Wilderness and Slow Attack, these were both very mellow albums. Either piano or acoustic guitar, just stripped down of basically, all this rock noise and just given this, wonderful, almost sweet and sad and melancholic sound, that Suede ballads were known for. But here there are two complete albums by him. And his last solo album was Black Rainbows 2011. And this sort of returns back into a more rock sound and was the next logical step because after this, Suede reformed and then started releasing the albums that I showed you there. So anyway, that is it. I hope that this didn't get too confusing because I would just go off on these different tangents, but you heard a little bit about Suede, you heard about Bernard Butler's solo career, you heard about Brett Anderson's solo career, and you heard about The Tears, which is both of those artists coming back together again. You know what? I'm not going to confuse you anymore right now. I'm going to play you a medley of tracks by Suede, by McAlmont Butler, by Bernard Butler, and by Brett Anderson, and by the Tears. And I'm going to start it right now, and I will see you on the other side.
Like Bonnie and Clyde, we're free. Don't say there's nothing between us. People push by with fear in their eyes in my life. Loving is dead. Loving is dead. She is strange and solemn. She is like cherry blossom. She is the Empress. Summer calls us to feel love. And I'll take them all on and force down their doors. And I'll take them all on and walk through their walls. And I'll take them all on and crawl to your door. And crawl to your door.
Well, that's it for this episode. I appreciate you sitting around and allowing me to talk about Suede. So much great music there, so much to unpack as well. But I hope that you enjoyed the medley and it maybe got you interested if you've never heard them before. And I appreciate you. And remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, to ring that bell for future notifications. And remember me, I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.